Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Free Think Dojo. I feel like we've been talking a lot about some doom and gloom stuff in the past videos recently, so I wanted to actually switch it up a little bit and talk about something that I think is really cool. On this channel, it's always kind of been about retro gaming. Specifically Xbox 360. I've mentioned before that I love like old Nintendo, GameCube, and 64 era as well. And retro has always had a very special place in my heart. I'm really, one of those people that's very indifferent to modern technology for games and movies. I think there's good games out there, and I think there's bad games out there. There's good movies and bad movies, good media, bad media. I think everybody has their right to have their opinions on what they enjoy and what they, want to pursue in terms of that content. But what I've noticed is the retro kind of realm and the retro era has started to influence a lot of like the newer generations. I've talked about in the past about how people from my generation are going back to retro, right? That's a very popular trend right now. There's a lot of people from, the 2000s and even 90s that are kind of taking a step back to that simplicity with their consumption, kind of like rejecting, PS5, Instagram, and all the newer technologies these days, and just trying to go back to something that is a little bit more comforting in a sense. But what I find actually pretty cool is I've heard a lot now and seen a lot of things that the newer generations are starting to also look back into retro gaming and just retro in general, which is really funny to me because a lot of people make the comment and the argument that, people that actually lived through that generation, maybe it was their childhood or whatever, a lot of that could just be nostalgia. The reason that they enjoy retro more is because it reminds them of a time when they, weren't as adultish. They didn't have responsibilities. They didn't have to deal with life in general. But I feel like when the newer generations take a step back and come over to like buy a 3DS and play it, whatever it may be, that is kind of like a great step to show that, maybe retro gaming was actually better or just as good as any modern technology is now. Now, obviously, you can make the argument for graphics being better and stories and things like that. And obviously, the technology has gotten a little bit better than it used to be in the N64 and GameCube era, or even Xbox 360. But I think what it really comes down to is people are realizing that, gaming simplicity is a lot more rewarding than what we're getting nowadays. Trust me, there's a lot of new games that have come out recently that I've really enjoyed. It's been fun. I've stuck and played them for hours, but there's just something about it where it's always rewarding in a different way. All these modern games, I'm always trying to find ways to beat it strategically and to, really dive deep into the story and try to understand all the lore. And then while I do enjoy doing that, I think it's different than playing a retro game where everything was kind of simple, didn't take a lot of brain power to play or understand it, but at the same time it was rewarding in more of an experience and more of like an emotional way than I think a lot of games can do nowadays. There's no other experience that I've ran into recently or just within my adulthood that has really hit the mark like an Ocarina of Time has, or Majora's Mask, or even like a Super Mario. Obviously games are a little bit different, and the modern games do scratch a different part of your brain in a way, but the music and the atmosphere, just overall experience of playing a game like Ocarina of Time, has always been a very, impactful emotion and a very impactful experience that I've always cherished. And for the newer generations to be able to experience something like that, I think it will kind of bring people together in a way that maybe we didn't expect. A lot of these people maybe are just doing it for a trend, or maybe they're just trying to find ways to, look cool. But either way, as long as they can actually sit down and experience it, even if it's a little bit, I think people realistically and naturally will probably see why we all love these games, why we keep coming back to these games at the end of the day. Now, obviously, if it is a trend, we'll kind of touch on that, because trends obviously are very common. If something's on social media and is taking off, like the 3DS or like a PSP or something, a lot of people are going to want to do that to just be like their friends or act unique or different or whatever the new kids are doing these days. And you know, it is what it is. I think trends are something that you just have to deal with, especially for people that actually cherish those things and you know were there in the times, right? But I still think either way, if they can sit down and like actually dive into it, even if just a little bit, you know, this retro era, I think it's going to be a way to kind of spread the message. It's a way to kind of throw it back into these, you know, faces of these corporations or just people nowadays that say, "Oh, it's all nostalgia," or you know, "Old games suck." Whatever the opinion may be, I think it's really hard to deny the magic of some of these games that we all grew up on. One thing I am hoping for, though, is the older generation typically has this, you know, precognitive reaction to, I guess, like gatekeep these retro games or retro eras. And I know it's very easy to do that because I know, you know, it's tale of the time of, you know, the older generation trying to shut off the newer generation because they may not understand or they might not cherish it the way they do. And I think even for me, it does cross my mind every now and again, like, are these trends going to ruin the market? You know, obviously it's making it more expensive because everybody wants it and it's in demand. But I think what the big picture to take away from it is like, I think there's certain ways we need to gatekeep it. I think the biggest gatekeeping action we should have is like the monetization of hobbies and things of that nature. The monetization of hobbies has become a big deal with, you know, Pokemon cards and retro gaming especially. But so many things these days have gotten monetized, and hobbies are now obviously becoming more of a money scheme than anything. But I think for us, our gatekeeping action should be, you know, these are not money making experiences. These are not ways to, you know, make a buck or try to become successful utilizing these, you know, gems in a way. So I feel like the newer generation needs to be gatekept by us, the older generation, but in a way that kind of takes away the monetization. I think who we let people into this era, and, you know, obviously we don't have control over it, but if we did, you know, have the ability to gatekeep, I think it's more about we need to let the people enjoy it. We need to let them have the experience of these retro games and retro experiences instead of trying to take it and resell it for a profit or try to turn it into something that it's not. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm seeing, which is good, is a lot of these retro, you know, newer generation individuals, they are trying to experience it, and they want to play these games. They want to see what it was like, almost like looking in a time capsule. And I think if it keeps going in that route, then there might not even be a need to gatekeep for the older generation. So it's really an exciting thing to see. I just wanted to comment on it because I really love retro gaming, and I think with the whole monetization of hobbies thing, I don't really think this is going in that direction personally. I think there's more to it. I think there's a deeper connection. But if you are part of the quote-unquote newer generation and you have been experiencing this kind of, you know, retro experience lately, let me know what you've been playing, what you've been watching. Definitely curious to see kind of some first-hand experiences of that newer generation taking a step back to the good stuff. Once again, everyone, I appreciate everyone sticking around in the Free Think Dojo with me today. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, like the video, and share it with your friends to grow the dojo, and I will see you guys next time.